wanted to come online today to talk about the idea of being behind in your high school. And we'll talk about that. And I'm hoping that I can totally reassure you about that whole idea when it comes to homeschooling high school. But first, I'd like to introduce myself. I am Ann. I blog at Annie and Everything, which is a blog where I talk about how to simplify the homeschool lifestyle and doing homeschool itself as well, because we want it to be doable for us. We don't want to be stressed out with a whole bunch of worries and expectations and stuff that are just not real for real people. I'm a real person, so I like to distill things down to where they are easy enough for me to handle, and that's what I want to do for you guys today. I want to encourage you about this idea of being behind in high school. Most of the time, we don't even have to use that word. Here's a question I have for you. How many of us went to public high school? That would be me. Anybody else? Most of us probably did. And there is where we actually first got the idea of being behind. Actually, it was our whole public school experience. And I actually did a video already about the government standards and what they mean to us as homeschoolers. So I'm not going to go over that again, but be remembering that we got this idea of behind from the standards that the public schools kind of indoctrinated into us, if you will. We have these preconceived notions. They are part of our culture. They come to us from all over the place. And we get this idea of how we think high school should look. And the fact is, it just doesn't have to look that way. When it comes to high school, here's something that we all need to know. We all need to know the difference between the homeschool law and the public school law. Every state is different. You need to check out your state's homeschool laws and not be worried about your state's public school laws. Let me tell you a story. When my oldest was going to be in 9th grade, I did what a lot of us do. I went to the Missouri State Education Department and I looked at what the requirements were for graduating in the state of Missouri, and I printed it all out. And I remember my husband was working in the garage, and I took it to him, and I kind of started reading to him, hey, this is what we need to do in high school. And some of this, I just don't know about. How are we going to do this? So many credits of math, so many credits of science, so many credits of social studies, and then there was this test. They had to pass this test about American history or something, and I don't even remember all the details right now, but he cut me off. I remember this. He cut me off and he said, Ann, we are homeschoolers. We do not have to do that, and we're not going to do that. That was a relief to me. That was a big relief to me. And over the next few days, what we ended up doing was designing for our own homeschool a set of graduation requirements that we wanted our kids to accomplish. And you can do that too. In fact, you should. People talk about using the public high school as a guide. You don't even have to do that. You are a responsible adult. You can be responsible enough to figure out what you want your kids to learn before they leave your house, before they stop their mandatory education. You can figure that out and you can make it happen. And the thing about that is, okay, and just a caveat here in case I get people, giving me feedback about this, there are a couple states that do have specific graduation requirements even for homeschoolers. So it is important that you do the research about your state. But for the most part, there are absolutely no or very minimal requirements across the states for homeschool graduates. So you can design that for yourself. You can sit down and determine all of those requirements. And I did a post about this, so look for that on the blog. Okay, so the question then becomes, how do we determine what requirements we want to put into our homeschool? What courses we want to require, how many credits we want to require. And that's when it depends on what your child wants to do. But realize that the word behind doesn't even have to be part of our vocabulary when it comes to us determining those requirements. Because we determine them ourselves, we can design them according to our children's needs and abilities. So what is your kid aiming for? Is he going to go to college or is he not going to go to college? And I'm here to tell you today that college is not the only option after high school. It's just not. we can fully prepare our children for adult life without them going to college. And especially if our child struggles academically, then it is probably in his or her best interests not to be pushed into a situation where the academics are even harder than they are here at high school, right? So please, if you are feeling overwhelmed by everybody saying, oh, college this, college that, don't be. Remember that we do homeschool because we want to meet the needs of our children, not somebody else's children, right? Okay, so when you are deciding with this kid who doesn't want to go to college, what to require for him from graduation, remember that work experience can be considered credits, volunteer work, working with his dad out back in the woods chopping wood, there can be that can be credit. Just call it work experience or work study or something. You don't even have to have a curriculum or make him answer a bunch of questions. Just as you're designing your requirements, what type of things do you want your child to know how to do or to have knowledge about before they graduate high school? So there's no behind there because you're not trying to meet somebody else's standards. You're setting the standard. Even public schools make exceptions to their standard graduation requirements. I looked up our local public school today, and they had wording that was like, if the student does not match these requirements, then an exception can be made in this case, that case, and the other case. Or when the child has disabilities, there are exceptions made as well. So these standards that we have in our head, we need to get rid of them. We set the standards. In most states, we can do that. Okay. So again, I just want to kind of reiterate, high school is, the point behind high school is that's the end of their mandatory education. Now they're going to be going out into the world to work or whatever. So again, just what do you want your child to know? To know how to do, what kind of thinking do you want them to have engaged in? What kind of discussions do you want them to have? That's another way of evaluating your child during the high school years is via discussion. You don't have to have them take book tests all the time. You can discuss things with them and ask them questions. Just like the blind side, right? So anyway, there's all sorts of ways to make high school happen for the child who struggles academically. And we don't have to submit ourselves to the standards that the public school does and that the public school graduation requirements do. We just don't have to. So that's if your child doesn't want to go to college. You kind of have free reign. And the word behind doesn't even need to be in your vocabulary. It just doesn't. If your child gets up to pre-algebra and you think that's enough for them to graduate and they have no intention of going to college, you're good. You're good. Okay. But then there are those who want their kid to go to college, or the child wants to go to college, or you want to just cover all your bases and prepare the child for college. Totally fine. But, we do have to admit that this is probably the place where the word behind does need to be part of our vocabulary. Can we just admit it? People talk about the myth of being behind, and I agree with that up to a point. But there is a point where we have to admit that our children are behind. And that's when it comes to meeting the requirements that colleges have for their applicants. Many colleges require 3 credits of high school math, for example, high school level math. Now, when you realize that Algebra 1 is the first math course that is considered to be high school level, then you see that a kid who does not get through that or does not get through that and 2 more will be literally behind when it comes to meeting those requirements for colleges. I think we can say that. I don't think that's an evil thing to say. Okay, so then what happens in that respect? Well, first thing to do is to educate yourself about what the college requirements are. Go to several websites of colleges in your area and find out what their requirements are for the people that apply to them. And I think a lot of that will ease your mind because you'll see that it's not as much as you have in your head that you think it should be or that you thought it was. Secondly, are we all aiming for the Ivy Leagues? Really, do we all have to have the highest level of college prep that anybody ever said should happen? No, we don't. As homeschoolers, we tend to really want to just aim for that level. That's not necessarily who our kids are. It's not who we were. We don't have to try to be these overachievers all the time. If anything is my mantra, that might be it. So look for colleges that will meet your child's abilities. There are plenty of them out there that the requirements are not as stringent, the test scores are not nearly as high, the GPA levels, you don't have to be perfect A student or even a perfect B student to get into many, many colleges. And then there's community college, which is a great choice for kids who want to try college, but maybe don't have all those requirements to get in. I looked at our local community college thing today, and guess what the requirement was to go to our local community college? You had to be 16 years old. It done. End of story. That's the requirement. They have to be 16 years old. They didn't say a word about what academic requirements there were. So if you've got a student who is through high school not completing enough high school level courses to apply to your quote unquote standard college, have them start a community college. And guess what? They have preparatory courses there. So maybe your kid can't jump into college level math, but they have the courses at the community college that your child can work through to get them ready for that. They could have graduated from high school based on your standards, and then if they decide they want to try college, now, yeah, they need to kind of work their way up to full level college courses, so they start with the preparatory level courses in math or English, for instance. They can probably jump right into college level in history or, some other subject. So it's nothing to worry about. Who cares if they have to take the preparatory courses? Is that a problem? I don't think it is. So what? They're not behind in high school until somebody says they are. And the only way they could be behind in high school is if they're not meeting the requirements to get into college. But again, we can work with that. We can work around that. We can have them try community college first. They can take the preparatory colleges at community college first and work their way up. Doesn't mean that they're so far behind that we're bad homeschool parents or that our child doesn't really deserve to graduate. None of that is true. Every child learns differently. Every child should approach high school differently. I know that my 5 kids, first 3 have graduated, 4th one's a senior, 5th one's in 8th grade this year. All of them have shown different ways that they excel and different ways that they struggle. And so I try to meet the curriculum and the requirements. I try to design them individually for them. So we don't have to do it the way we were brought up to think it has to be done. That's a cultural thing. And when you look at your state homeschool law, and when you check the college requirements, and when you realize that college doesn't have to be the only way to go, all of those things can help you see that the idea of being behind in high school is a fear, a worry, a burden we don't need to carry, okay? This is my job here, is to help you realize that we don't need to carry all these expectations, all these fears, all these burdens. Take a deep breath. It's all going to be just fine. Meet the needs of your student. Design your graduation requirements, yes, in accordance with your state's homeschool laws, but design those so that your student has fulfilled what you want them to know by the time they are ready to take on the world. And if you've done that, then you've done a great job. Okay? It's been great being here today. Thanks for listening. Bye. Oh, you know what? This stupid ceiling fan is really bugging me because I just realized it's like sticking out of my head the entire time, so it looks like I have a little flower hat on. Is there a way to make this better? Okay. Okay, shall we try that for a while? You can see my door, but at least the ceiling fan isn't sticking out of my head. Am I going to edit this out eventually? I have no idea. Okay, there we go. Hi, everybody. No ceiling fan here. Okay, so...